Let's bring in Nina Schick, a policy analyst at the think tank Open Europe. They're saying they want to lift these border controls, but nothing has really changed. So is that likely?
Not in the short term, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, we saw many countries clamping down since the summer when the migration crisis really took hold. Germany, France, Sweden, you know, much of Northern Europe now has border controls in place. What they've done, if you look at it legally, is actually permissible under the Schengen Agreement. But I think these border controls will continue to be in place because it looks like the migration crisis isn't going to go anywhere.
So what difference has it made having these controls in place? The difficulties, the benefits, what differences?
Well, the interesting thing is that the EU's response to the migration crisis was to impose a quota so that each country would take a relative share of refugees and asylum seekers. In practice, that did not work at all. So what happened is that many people flocked to certain countries where they thought they'd be welcome. And as it turns out, these countries, the Northern European countries, have been overwhelmed.
But these were before the Schengen agreements were suspended. I mean, since they've been suspended, what difference has it made now?
Well, I think it makes it much more difficult for EU citizens to travel around. Economically, there could be some cost, although this is not stopping the free movement of goods and capital. It simply means that it'll take a lot longer for people to get from one country to another, so it'll be inconvenient.
Is that it?
And I mean, maybe, perhaps, you know, there might be some clamping down on cross-border movement of arms, which is relatively easy within the Schengen zone. But in reality, I think it makes life a bit more inconvenient for EU citizens.
So if it's difficult for you or me to cross a particular border, but it's also difficult for somebody with a more violent approach to life to carry AK-47s across a border, then surely it's been worthwhile.
Well, yes. I mean, that's obviously one answer to combating terrorism across the EU. And part of what we saw in Paris was the ease with which terrorists were able to travel from one country to the other with precisely that AK-47s in the back of their car. So perhaps that will add an extra security element. However, that is not the answer to the security or terror risk in the EU.
No, but it might be one little brick in a new wall that European countries want to build. So is there a possibility, Nina, that rather than, as he says, you know, we hope to be able to review this, that actually more countries will set up border controls, that Schengen will be changed in such a way that it isn't the free movement of people that it is now, that it is fundamentally altered?
Well, I think Schengen is obviously certainly under strain and it needs to be reformed. However, in terms of whether or not this is the end of Schengen, I would disagree, because it's been such a fundamental project of European integration and it's given the EU such advantages as well that politicians will at least...
Sorry to butt in, but I was interested when you said it will be changed. In your opinion, in what way?
So obviously we're seeing these temporary border controls which don't look to be temporary. I think they'll be there for the short and medium term future, so that makes travel a lot more difficult. But also the EU is starting to review how they guard Schengen's external border as well, including the idea of having a European border force policing the EU's external border. Now, this raises issues around sovereignty. If you're Greece and you have a European border patrol patrolling your border.
Indeed, the powers that may well be invested in that group could well be to go into a country that doesn't even want you to go into it.
Exactly.
That's for another day.
That's for another day.
Thank you very much, Nina Schick.